In terms of my, I guess, involvement in public life and civic engagement, from a very early age, my father, I accompanied him to trips to school board meetings, to trips to Raleigh, North Carolina, the capital of North Carolina, to see discussions in the General Assembly. And from a very early age, I realized that a lot of folks out there don't have our best interests at hand, and we have to continually fight and be on the front line to make sure that our interests are spoken and articulated, but also that we have a voice at the table. And so just wanted to thank you for that opportunity, because subconsciously my involvement kind of stems from a young age, understanding the value of being engaged in the public process. So just really briefly, I wanted to talk about my background. I've been a public servant for 18 years. I've worked at local, regional, and state government, both in North Carolina, Maryland, as well as at the federal level. And my background, I'm actually have a degree in architecture and city and regional planning. So I'm a transportation planner currently with the city of Baltimore. And just to let you know what planners do, because a lot of folks are not familiar exactly, planners help government officials, business leaders, and citizens create and sustain a better quality of life for the communities in which they live or work. And that's a pretty big task, but essentially what I wanted to talk about was accountability. Both accountability in terms of community members representing the interests of the communities in which they live, but also accountability of government to the communities in which they take an oath to serve. So first and foremost, I wanted to talk about social equity. Social equity is the fair, just, and equitable management of all institutions serving the public directly or by contract. The fair and just and equitable distribution of public services and implementation of public policy, and a commitment to promote fairness, justice, and equality in the formation of public policy. That, in essence, sums up what we're supposed to be doing as public servants, and also working with communities across the country. But obviously, in many cases, that does not happen. And again, that kind of promotes the value and importance of standing up in your community and being an active participant in the civic engagement process. So in terms of accountability, again, I think it's important that we are all engaged and a contributor for the betterment of our community in which we live and or are invested, our interests are invested. Ultimately, the goal is to have a fully sustainable, self-sustaining and sustainable community. But as taxpayers, we need to hold our government officials and elected officials accountable to our needs. And I'm going to give a couple examples, but before I do that, I wanted to just speak on where we both have, I guess, from the federal side, some justification and kind of backing of the federal government that dates back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. A growth out of that is the environmental justice. In my line of work as a transportation planner, I have to be very cognizant on every project of how this plays out. But essentially, environmental justice was made possible out of executive order in 1994 by President Clinton. And it essentially is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, income, with respect to development, implementation, enforcement, environmental laws, and regulations. And lastly, all of this grows out of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, in programs and activities receiving federal assistance in any capacity. Just wanted to read this really quick quote from John F. Kennedy. It says, related to the Civil Rights Act, simple justice requires that public funds to which all taxpayers of all races, color, and national origins contribute not be spent in any fashion which encourages, entrenches, or subsidizes, or results in racial discrimination in any capacity. And a lot of folks, and the reason I bring that up is because we see in Congress a lot of discussion about chipping at the bit in terms of breaking down the essence of the Civil Rights Act. There's a lot of components of that that are very prevalent today, and if we don't stand up and speak in favor of that, or making sure that it maintains and it is as strong as it was over 50 years ago, we're going to be in a lot of trouble as a community. And I think it's just very important that we know all the benefits. And the work that I do in transportation, there are a lot of projects that have happened over 50 years ago, highways that broke up minority communities. There was no consideration. If there's a thought of where putting a locally undesirable land use, such as a nuclear plant or what have you, our community is where they look first to do that. So essentially, I just wanted to make a point of how important it is for us to stay engaged, whether it be on a planning commission or if it is at a nonprofit level. But we hold our elected leaders accountable. Our taxpayer dollars are important, and how they're spent is predicated on how we organize and keep them accountable to our interests in our community. Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah, you can see we have some very